I am joined here by Maria Colacurcio. She is the CEO of Syndio. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Maria, you have quite the impressive background. You helped co-found Smartsheet, and they actually went public with us in 2018 here at the New York Stock Exchange. You have worked with many different impressive companies, Starbucks, Microsoft, and now you are the CEO of Syndio. Can you tell me about this company and what it does?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me today. It's just such a pleasure to be here at the New York Stock Exchange. It's really about giving companies the analysis and the data they need. Number one, to pay people to the penny what they need to make sure they're not at legal risk of a disparity because of gender, race, or ethnicity. But on the flip side, it's like a report card. It's looking at where are your opportunities to promote, to move, to have better representation in your company, and where are those finite, clear points of opportunity to make a change, and then leaving it up to the company based on their objectives and goals as to how they want to address that. How do they want to approach that? In what time frame do they want to commit to that to get better? But it's giving them everything they need. It's data that can be there in an instant, in real time, to guide the discretion that's involved in a lot of these decisions.
Why do you think pay equity, pay transparency is so important to both the employees and the companies?
It's a great question, and I think what's interesting is to zoom out and look at that question over time. So 4 years ago when we started this, and I found Zev Eigen, who had founded the company, and he hired me as CEO, we looked at what the motivations were for companies to do this, and it was primarily they were trying to reduce legal risk. So if you think about pay equity class actions, pay equity litigation, there was a marked rise in those after the recession of 2007 and 8. So companies were like, I don't want to get sued. I want to make sure that I'm addressing that and reducing my risk. But over the past 4 years, that's really changed. And the motivation has now moved to how do I engage and get more trust from my employees? And one of the ways to do that is to be more transparent and to proactively tell your employees, I'm looking at this, I'm committed to this. I want to make sure that you feel comfortable you're choosing to work at a company that's committed to ensuring equal work for equal pay.
Absolutely, transparency is key. And what would be your advice, or how would you do an elevator pitch, so to speak, to a company that's not necessarily looking at implementing something like this?
I would say in today's macro environment, it's really important to tell companies, you might think in a time of economic volatility that this can move to the back burner, but this is where leaders really create the legacy of how they're remembered. So how you respond in times of crisis, that's your legacy, and employees are watching. So if you decide to push things like diversity, equity, inclusion, pay equity, really taking a data-driven approach to are your people valued for who they are and what they contribute to the back burner just because times are tough, you will be remembered for that.
So what has been the response so far since you've been working with the NYSE?
The response has been really positive. I think because the NYSE inherently brings so much credibility around being the premier listing partner in that you provide tools. It's all tools, not rules. And so you provide not only tools, but partnerships with companies like ours that bring that credibility and trust to a listing company that they've got what they need to go address this really accelerating legislative and compliance landscape around ESG, around pay transparency. So I think the response has been really positive on both sides because for Syndio, it's added this element of credibility that we understand financial services, we understand what it is that you do, and for the listing companies, it's finally someone is bringing me proactively the tools and technology I need to be successful in this area. So in order to make meaningful progress against the wealth gap, you have to also address the median pay gap. And that's a reflection of representation, of movement, of opportunity. So I really think the next wave post-pay transparency is going to be opportunity transparency. That is people looking more at not what folks are paid, but how are they given opportunities to advance, to move, to get different roles in the company.
Oh, wow. And it starts here.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.